There's a lot of color and a lot of technical detail that I think we all need to be watching for. I will flag two things. Number one is whether there is American oversight over the algorithm, any sort of operational control. We know that ByteDance, what's been reported so far is that ByteDance will retain a significant ownership even in this new American holding structure. But let's look deeper at the technical control and what the White House demands are over how that technology works, how we see how American citizen data is being utilized and fed into that algorithm. That's ultimately at the crux of the national security issue. The second point I'll raise is a bigger one. And this is a question for broader corporate America, for Wall Street, and for business leaders. And the question is, how much U.S. government direct participation are you willing to swallow? Not only in this TikTok deal, but in future arrangements. So we've already seen a quote-unquote golden share being required in the Nippon Steel deal that was approved by the White House. Now we're hearing that the White House is going to demand a board seat in this new American TikTok arrangement. Golden shares, board seats today. What comes next after that? And how far will the administration go into this direct government intervention, direct government control, and say into what normally are corporate business decision making?
Good point. And Clark, some cast the TikTok deal as a sort of savior to the U.S.-China trade talks, but there's also the NVIDIA question, and Beijing is really mounting pressure on them. Do you think at this point chips, NVIDIA, still being used as a leverage in trade talks, or is it just sort of written off as China doubles down on self-reliance on chips?
I think with NVIDIA, you could certainly envision, as part of some type of broader agreement, you can see Jensen Huang standing at the side of President Trump while he announces that we're going to ease export controls because in return, China has announced that they are going to invest $400 billion into the American technology stack, and we'll call that as a win. But to me, that's a bit superficial, and I think the news that came out of the Cybersecurity Administration of China this week is telling, where they basically asked their homegrown cloud providers, homegrown data centers, technology companies, and AI model development companies whether they even need NVIDIA kit anymore. And the point here is that the Chinese tech ecosystem is extraordinarily innovative, extraordinarily dynamic, and I think in the long run, attempting to win the technology race by depriving China of this key technology is like trying to keep oxygen from a fire. The Chinese tech ecosystem is going to find its oxygen on its own, and so this is really only a short-term fix. Export controls have a place, do not get me wrong, but let's be clear that export controls, particularly in AI and in the longer-term technology race, are a means of, I think, perhaps only slowing advancements. It most certainly is not going to prevent the ultimate development of the Chinese technology stack.
Clark, this is Martin. Let me jump in with a couple before we have to let you go. Listen, I'm wondering, as somebody who used to be in government, I mean, how frustrating this is for you to watch. And I want to get back to your point about how a summit between the U.S. and China, two sides, the president and Xi Jinping, is probably, we're not there yet, right, in terms of the timing. Simply because there's not a big enough deal on the table that both sides can sign off on. I get that. But what is it going to take is what I want to know from you, because both sides have met, you know, the last round of talks in Madrid. That would be the fourth time in 4 months, right? So it seems to be pointing towards a face-to-face between the principals at some stage. Or I'm wondering, and this is the frustration part, right? We're seeing diplomacy conducted literally by principals, very, very high-level people, cabinet officials right now, whether it's Greer or Bissett, etc., and the rest of the grunt work, right, the detail work, the technical work, which usually is handled by experts, and let's say at state. The problem there is the manpower is lacking today because state has been hollowed out and people continue to leave. How much of that is holding back diplomacy between the U.S. and China?
I think it's an excellent point, Martin. You're absolutely right. It's not only State Department. Let's remember that the majority of the National Security Council was fired, apparently at Laura Loomer's behest. And so there is a capacity deficit in the machinery of the U.S. government that, as you rightly point out, normally makes these deals. I've attended what used to be the Strategic and Economic Dialogue, the SNED in Beijing, and I will say this, I am accustomed to seeing the machinery of American government at the principal level, as you mentioned, so the trade representative and the secretaries of state, of treasury, of commerce, all the way down to those technical working staff you mentioned. I'm accustomed to seeing them working on thorny issues in the U.S.-China relationship, so matters of intellectual property protection, market access, licensing, forced tech transfer, joint ventures. These are the matters that truly are of critical importance to the American business community as we try to deepen, open market access in China and deepen the integration. I'm not sure I've seen an appetite yet from this administration to really get into those thorny matters. We see big headline-grabbing deals. We see TikTok. We hear that soybeans are going to be on the table again. Look, I grew up in Arkansas, a rural farming state. I know folks that grow soybeans, and they are hurting right now because China has stopped buying from America. That needs to be addressed. But ultimately, there is a lot more underlying this relationship, and you are very right to point out that takes a lot of expertise, a lot of technical talent, and most importantly, it takes time and political will from the White House. There has to be a signal from the top down to the interagency to get this work done. I don't know whether that signal is being sent, and that remains to be seen.